Pass on a quick fuel tank repair trick that I learned back in the 90s. Did a lot of fuel tanks back in the 90s that repair the fuel tanks on the tractor trailers for this account. They had over 100 tractor trailers that I did maintenance on. And all kinds of garbage trucks and trailers. But yeah, I fixed all kinds of fuel tanks. A lot of them on the diesel rigs. This particular tank, I'm just going to tell you a quick story and give you a quick trick so you know, put it in your hat. I got a call. This place was set up at the sugar mill in one of the local towns here along the Front Range. They own part of that. So that's where they had their one wood grinder set up, was at the sugar mill. They called one afternoon. I think it was a Friday afternoon. They called in a panic. Sam Hill Oil just came out there and filled the fuel tank on the wood grinder, 400-gallon fuel tank. And it was just, it was one of them deals where the sides of the tank was straight. You know, it was straight like this. And then the bottom of it was V'd at a 45. And then it came together at a point on the bottom. That whole vertical side was split. And I literally come screaming in the yard sideways. They were freaking out. We just filled the fucking thing with 400 gallons of diesel fuel, and it's just freaking running out. And I come in the yard sideways, past Sam Hill Oil, leaving. I got there pretty quick. I was only a couple miles down the road. And I ran over there and looked at the tank real quick, and there was like probably about a 2-foot split down the right side. And it was from where the 45 part, that was okay, but where it turned vertical on the one side, that whole corner, the whole top 2 foot was just cracked all the way. It wasn't dripping out. It was pretty much running out. So the guy met me over there at the grinder real quick. You know, what do you think? What do you think? We're losing our ass here. We just freaking put 400 gallons in it. It's all running out on the ground. I was like, yeah, I can handle it, man. So he had another guy there with him. I drug out the wire feeder real quick. I just had the SP with me. And it's like, fuck it, we'll wire feed the damn thing real quick. So, little trick that I had learned from the old timers, though, in the early 70s and seen somebody else do this. The crack was pretty wide and it was running out pretty bad. So, this wood grinder was out in the middle of the yard. It was probably 100, 150 yards from the building. I ran over into their building real quick to the bathroom. And I grabbed a bar of soap, just regular hand soap off the sink. I stole their bar of soap out of the bathroom. Ran back over to that wood grinder. I took that bar of soap in my hand, went to the top of the tank where the crack was, and leaned in on it pretty hard, and just smeared it down that crack. Well, the soap's being soft, it pretty well sealed that crack up. And it shut down. Probably 80 to 90% of the fuel quit leaking out temporarily, which was what I wanted so I could set up and start welding. And I told these other turkeys that were with me, and I said, I ain't worried about the damn fuel tank blowing up. It's diesel, man. I said, I'm worried about the ground catching on fire while I'm welding on it because it's been sitting here leaking and then catching me the hell on fire. So I need you two guys to come over here, step back a little bit, and keep an eye on the ground. And if you see the frickin' ground start burning, fucking yell at me, man, so I can get the hell down and we can throw some dirt on it or something. So, yeah, no problem, man. We got your back. And fired everything up real quick, plugged in the SP, man, and started at the top and just started chasing a vertical down. Well, that soap will melt and get out of your way from the arc. So that's a killer trick, man. Remember that. Bar of soap, smear it into the crack. Shut about 80% of that fuel down. So I started stitching that up. It was stitching up really good, man. I emery cloth the corner real quick, and it was just, I've welded a lot of fuel tanks. It wasn't a big deal, man. So I'm just stitching up a storm. I stitched that vertical down on there and got down to the last little corner, and it started bubbling out pretty good. And had to trigger it a few times, you know, and the heat would push it away, and then trigger it again real quick before the diesel got in there, and managed to seal it up. Wasn't leaking a drop. And I popped my freaking helmet and turned around and started talking because I thought those turkeys were watching my back. They were 150 yards away over in the goddamn sugar mill building. Took me a minute to look around. Finally, hey, fuck you guys, man. I wouldn't have heard nothing if you'd have been yelling from over there, you freaking turkeys, man. Wrapped my shit up and got the hell out of there. But that's a good fuel tank tip and trick. Get a bar of soap, man. If you're in a bind, smear it into the crack. It'll melt and get out of your way as you're welding. Doesn't cause any problem in the weld. Won't give you porosity or nothing like that. So, just a quick tip for fuel tanks. Like I said, I did a lot of them. I'd weld the fuel tanks on the drilling rigs while they were sitting there idling. Take some of that 612, 564s, and just, man, that's some nice vertical down running stuff. Just stitch it on up and go to the next job. Go from there. But if you're working on, you know, diesel tanks and stuff like that, and you're really in a bind and you're trying to shut it down a little bit while, you know, because it's leaking so bad while you're repairing it, grab a bar of soap, man. That worked out excellent. Like I said, it shut down probably 80% of that leak while I stitched it up, and it just melts and gets out of your way. It's not a big deal. So that worked out really good, though, and I've done that a couple times now. And back in the early days, you know, doing regular gas tanks, you got to be careful on them gas tanks. I always purge a regular fuel tank. If I'm in a bind and I don't have, you know, some argon to purge the tank or something with, and I've done this before, and I know it sounds scary. It scared the hell out of me the first time I seen, you know, an old timer do it. Weld on a gas tank on a car, and you want to make sure the motor's warmed up and the choke's off so you're not pumping rich fumes into the tank. But we did like I did on the bigger tanks. I took a hose, put it over the muffler of this Impala, and stuffed it on into the fuel tank, you know, where you put your gas in. And like I said, it was warmed up, choke was off, and I just let it sit there and run for 3 or 4 minutes, and that way I knew the tank was really good and full of fumes that were non-explosive theoretically and technically. And then I fired up the torch before I crawled underneath it to weld on it. I literally fired up the torch and stuck the torch in the gas neck of the car. If it's gonna blow up, I want the sumbitch to blow up while I'm standing out here on the side. I don't want it blowing up while I'm laying underneath it, because you're gonna die. All that gas is going to soak you, and you will not put it out. You will die on the spot. I'd rather risk an explosion standing there to the side, you know, behind the tire. And if the tank blows, well, the tire is going to protect me a little bit underneath and hopefully not, you know, get all the fuel on me. But I just long-armed the torch when I thought it was ready and literally stuck the torch into the gas neck of the car, and nothing happened. It was full of fumes, and as soon as you see that and it's not going to blow up, game on, get her done. Got the hell underneath that Impala and started stitching that tank up real quick. So pulled that one off, you know, not a problem. The gasoline's always a lot more stressful, though. It will blow up. That diesel, I ain't worried about it. I probably repaired over 100 diesel tanks. Never had a problem. I've only had one tank woof on me through the years, and that was a gas tank. Been sitting in somebody's shop under a bench for 10 years, so it was all varnished, and he was just getting rid of the tank. Wanted the handles trimmed off of it. Yeah, no big deal. It's sitting out back at his place on a flatbed farm truck. I hate grinding. I just don't like grinding. It's a pain in the ass, man. So I trimmed it in a little tight. I was watching it as I was trimming that handle off, just shaving it a little closer to the tank, shaving it a little closer. And it's like, the closer I shave it, the less grinding I'm going to have to do. Man, I leaned in just a little bit more and seen the tank slit open. And as soon as I seen that open, I just dropped the torch and rolled under the truck, man. Luckily, I had all the vents off the tank. Always take the vents off, the cap off on take everything off that fucking fuel tank you can, so that if it does blow, it has places to get out rather than expanding and blowing the tank. So, but yeah. Anytime you're welding on fuel tanks, you need to purge it, or at least do, you know, that right there. That's how we did it in the old days, man. We didn't get a bottle to purge it or nothing. We just put a hose over the muffler and stuffed it on into the tank and let it fill up for a while. And if you could, you'd just leave it there and running. If not, you know, you'd fill it up and take it back out real quick, shove the torch in it, make sure it ain't going to blow, and get welding. If you start stressing and your welding's taking a little bit longer, take a quick break, stuff that hose back in there, fill it full of fumes again so you don't got to worry about it blowing up. But the one tank, though, that I had, that one I started to tell you about, when that slit, I seen the slit go through the tank, trimming that handle off. I knew I was done. I didn't even wait. I just, as soon as I seen it slide open, I frickin' dropped the torch and just rolled underneath that flatbed truck, and that thing sounded like a freight train. Pooh! It swelled up and woo! It just fucking howled and whistled for about a minute, man. I had a buddy. It was outside of town where we were. I had a buddy. He was down over the hill taking a crap, to be honest with you, behind an old trailer down there. I looked over the hill. He comes duck walking around the corner, still got his pants around his ankles. You okay? You crazy son of a bitch? I was like, yeah, I'm good, man. He duck walked back around the corner so he could finish his growler session. But yeah, that's the closest I've ever came in 40 years. And I seen it coming and I knew better. I knew if I nicked into that tank, shit was going to go down. And rather than spending a little extra couple minutes grinding, I decided to trim it a hair closer with a torch, and it didn't pan out too good. So, but just quick couple fuel tank stories. The soap trick works really good. Never seen that anywhere. I've never read it I mean, I've seen it from an old timer. I didn't see it literature-wise, or that's nothing I learned online. That's just straight up old school 50s, 60s trick from the old timers that I grew up with. I'm third generation welder, so I was getting drug around a welding truck when I was 5 years old. The old man was a repair welder for flat irons and Western Aggregate. So I was in the gravel yards when I was 5 years old, seeing all this shit. And it was one of them deals. Pretty harsh life in general. Ended up in a foster home, but the stepdad was a smart old boy. I mean, I kept your pie hole shut and you kept your ears open and you listened, man. That's how I learned that Chevy fuel pump rod trick. I learned that from just keeping my mouth shut, and I heard him talk about it and do it more than once himself on small block Chevys, just pulling that bolt and where the battery cable is on the front, run a little longer bolt in there and it'll hold that fuel pump rod in there for you. Swap your fuel pump, got to mess with the rod. Take the bolt back out, put your ground cable back on with a shorter bolt, done deal. So learned a lot from them old timers, and back then too, you younger people, there wasn't the internet and all this crap. You wanted literature, you either ordered the book or you took your sorry ass down to the library and you hung out in the library for a frickin' day researching stuff that way. So it's a hell of a lot easier these days just to, pull out the book of knowledge, your phone, and go, yep, let's see what's going on here. So, but anyhow, just wanted to pass some couple stories and that soap trick on to everybody else. So keep that in your hat. And that's one of them things you might not use but a couple times in your life. But when you need it, it works. So everybody be safe.